Hey everybody, welcome to week 9. Welcome to the haunted CRJU 301. I can't believe all the trouble we've had with the software and everything that's gone wrong or at least been testy in this particular course. In any event, we're moving along. Hopefully we will overcome all of this in the last 7 weeks of the course. Last week we talked about defense counsel. And, something to think about is that there's a lot of difficult parts about being defense counsel, and as far as getting clients and being prepared and balancing your schedule and, being ready to go, especially if you're private counsel, when prosecution answer's ready and the judge is pretty much tired of any of the delays that have been going on. And so with that in mind, we then talked about defense attorneys in the discussion board, and you got to be a defense attorney. And you got to discuss some issues when it came to plea bargaining. This was a tough case. A lot of students, read that there was indications that the defendant was not guilty, and they jumped to the conclusion that the defendant was not guilty. One thing that you have in common with most defendants is, at least in the initial consultation, they're not guilty. And they'll tell you that they didn't do it. That may change as you talk to them later down the road, but it's pretty interesting that you do see that. So that was defense attorneys. I hope you liked the chance of playing defense attorney for a couple of hours, put those together. And now we're talking about defendants, victims, and witnesses. Defendants, when they come into court, they're young. And some people look at this, and some commentators think that the reason defendants are young is because there is some thing going on with the criminal justice system to look at young people. Well, yeah, there is. Most crimes are committed by people 16 to 26. And most 16 to 26-year-olds will take chances, whether it's DUI, whether it's using illicit substances, whether it's getting drunk and laying around on the street, whether it's going into somebody's house because their friend says it's an easy way to make some money for drugs or whatever else. And at 16 to 26, that's going to be the wheelhouse. The discussion about minorities is, there's not a lot of discussion in the book, and certainly by commentators or in the in other things that you read about, who commits the crimes. And I think the best way to look at that, the most efficient way, is to look at who is described as the suspect in most crimes. And then once you look at that, and you can kind of get an idea who the people are that commit crimes. Well, one thing I thought that was pretty interesting in the chapter was a discussion about social media. And it's pretty interesting if you watch, the TV shows. Like the one I'm thinking of right now is The First 48. And Chris, my wife, and I, we were talking about this earlier today, about how one of the first things that investigators do is go to a suspect's Facebook page. And they get all kinds of stuff. How many times have you seen somebody accused of a crime, whether it's an assault or something more serious, and they're standing in front of the camera, holding the gun, flashing some sort of a sign, whether it's gang-related or something else. It happens all the time. It's pretty good. It's a pretty interesting thing. So I found that really interesting with looking at defendants. And then, of course, it relates to last week. What's the most difficult part about being a defense attorney is getting the defendant to pay, getting the client to pay. And a lot of counsel has a whole bunch of open accounts that have not been paid. So things from from last chapter and this chapter to think about. When you look at the witness, and the witness comes to court, especially for a civilian witness, what a huge pain in the neck. They may be called to court 2 or 3 or 4 times before they actually testify. Now, DAs really work on minimizing this, but the defense, may be coming to the close of their case, and now DA's got to get witnesses in the hallway because judges do not like to wait, and they don't want to be sitting up on the bench, waiting for somebody to show up. And that's a concern for DAs, is making sure that the witnesses get there. And the witness has to worry about who's in the audience. Is it a friend of the defendant? Is there going to be some sort of retribution? If they maybe bit off more than they can chew as a witness, and the potential for other things to happen. You witness, whether it's a police officer or forensic specialist, or some sort of professional witness, or a lay witness, you get called to come in, and usually you'll get called about 10 in the morning for a case. From 10 till whenever they're still maybe doing jury selection, so you're sitting in the hallway waiting for your chance to testify. And so you wait and wait and wait, and finally it gets to be 4 in the afternoon and you get sent home. Now imagine as an officer, you're working graves, and you've been called in at 10 in the morning. Well, you get off work at 7, get home. Even if you live close, 7:30, you try to get to bed right away and sleep fast. So maybe you got 2 hours of sleep. Then you get the phone call at 10. You got to get up, you got to get cleaned up, uniform or suit or business attire, and then drive to the court. And then you sit in the hallway for hours on end. Very difficult. Professional witnesses, they get on the stand. Most defense counsel is pretty aloof. It's very apparent to the jury that it's an adversarial relationship, and officers need to maintain their cool. One of the things that counsel will try to do is to get an officer angry or emotional. But if you can just sit back and answer all the questions honestly, even if it makes your case look bad, the jury appreciates that. And you're on the stand, and the defense attorney says, did the witness tell you that he could identify my client? Well, instead of equivocating on that, the answer is maybe no. Never said that. And that's an important thing that you should say, that that's a possibility. And if defense asks you a really good question, answer it honestly. Victims have the hardest time, and it can be, depending upon the case, it can be one where a victim is just really not happy that the incident occurred at all, or it could be an instance where the victim is severely traumatized, and that trauma has not gone away by the time they go to court. I can think of one attempt murder case where the victim was shot in the back with a shotgun as she was trying to run away, and she fell down, and the suspects caught up to her and shot her. And you could see on the stand that she hadn't gotten over it yet. Most of her injuries that continued on were emotional. So it wasn't as though she had a large physical issue, paralysis or something of that nature, but she was still trying to cope with it. Very difficult set of circumstances for her. So that's just kind of the basics for this chapter on witnesses and and defendants and victims. With that in mind, you've got a writing assignment, I believe, coming up this week, and it is. Let me take a quick peek here while we're talking. There we go. It is about victims' rights. A very interesting topic, and how that's changed, how much of that's changed in the past 20 years, where victims were kind of overlooked as just being, that they were, completely able and ready and willing to take care, do their part as a witness, and walk in, or relive horrible circumstances, and we're able to walk out and everything was going to be fine. So victims' rights are the topic this week. With that.